This is part 3 of the Operation Gabriel 23 PFA Parachute Field Ambulance tour of UNIMIR in Rwanda. So this part covers the move south, and this move south was necessitated due to the withdrawal of the French troops from the humanitarian protection zone in the southwest of the country. This withdrawal of French troops was thought to perhaps precipitate a further exodus of the 1.5 million refugees who were living in the HBZ zone. So 23 PFA were deployed in order to reassure the community. So on the 23rd of August, the dressing station pods were all put on transport, and then we were moved to the south of the country. As you can see, Katabi is located in the southwest. By the time we left, it was a bit late in the day, and so we stayed overnight as detailed in the last time. And we were going to be based at Katabi in order to work at Kabeo camp, and we're going to that with more details. And as you can see with the map up there, we would be based at Katabo and then trucking each day, which is around about 3 hours, into the Kabeo refugee camp. Kabeo refugee camp had around 100,000 refugees there, and that was our treatment aim. You can see just in the south of that picture there, the little buildings there, that's where we were housed. And you can see here the Katabi and Kabeo route. As I described before, the main roads were quite good in Rwanda, but once you got off the main roads, yeah, the mud tracks weren't that special, to put it bluntly. So, we arrived at location Katabi after our fourth overnight stay in a Vaca truck, which was lovely. And then we settled in. I think we had a day to settle in before we did not a recce, but a visit to the Kabeo camp in order to set up the treatment centre. So the DS was split up into sections, of which I was in A section, and I'll go into the details of who was in this section shortly. Here's a picture of the HQ element. HQ element was, they had the sheds, whatever, and quite comfortable up there. There was a catering tent as well where we had our meals. But it was on top of this big old hill which we had to walk up each day, or for tea, or for food. So that was lovely. Food-wise, we finally came off ration packs after a month or so, which was a shame, to be really honest, because the chefs tried their best, and believe me, the catering corps chefs in Bosnia were absolutely fantastic, but very limited. We were at the end of a supply route from the UK, and I definitely felt the end of the supply route syndrome where we were. We had 3 meals a day. Well, it was a breakfast, a snack for lunch when we were working in the refugee camp, and in tea. But there were no extras, and the rice that we had for most of the time was really quite crunchy, which I think is overcooked or undercooked. But yeah, so definitely lost weight whilst in Rwanda. It's funny, when we went to Kabeo, where the main echelons were, or I dare say the word, the Remps, their food was so much better, man. They had condiments, sauces and shit. But yeah, quite jealous, eh? But out in the sticks, as I was having loaded weapons, etc., yeah, the food was a bit average, shall we say. But such is life. Having just come back from P Company, I suppose my phys wasn't that good because I had a bit of a knee injury. So I just had to cope with day-to-day stuff as opposed to sort of doing any heavy exercise. But yeah, so each morning and each tea, I had to jog up this big old hill to get to lunch, breakfast. So that was fine. I suppose it kept the blood going. But you can see where most of the vehicles were parked, apart from the Ambos, which were parked in the Section DS areas. So no worries. And that's also the area where we had our first phone call home, which is quite exciting after being there for a couple of days. It's quite good. The Siggies who were with us just stuck up a couple of aerials and radioed us into a ship somewhere in Portishead, I think, or something. And then we got a telephone, they put it to landline, and we managed to call home. It wasn't free, of course, because the army's not like that, but such is life. And then after that, our phone calls were apparently once every week, but I think I got back to Kigali where the telephones were about twice during the tour. So, funny old world. So, a bit of a look at the various accommodations. So that's where we're just looking down there. You can see the brick houses are in. No electricity, no running water. But if you've ever been exposed to the army, that's all good because you've got accommodation. 3 men to a room-ish and 10 to a small bungalow. We had a little stirrup pump for a shower, so that was all good. And I think I had the only American camp cot, which is good because the brick camp cots are shit, to be honest. Mozzie net, because even though we were high, about 6,000 foot, the Mozzie was still around. And malaria is bad stuff, man. We're on the once a week malaria tablets, which apparently send some people a bit odd, but we didn't see any of that out there. There's a fella there, I think it's a private in the sections. He's got the fogger, so he has to go around there every morning and every evening, fogging, which is just an insecticide to kill the mozzies to keep them under control. This is midway through the tour. We're all very excited about having a hot shower and a torrential tropical downpour. It was bloody freezing, and he needed it for the thing. Here we have the main source of communication back in the day. This is the Bluey Forces letter. It was free to send, which was nice. And you can send as many as you want. You just had to get hold of the bloody things. So postage was a bit shite to begin with, but it eventually sorted itself out. It's only a relatively short tour of 3 months, so postal service did quite well. But yeah, it sort of didn't get delivered for a while, and then it did. And just reading back on the letters, it's old sort of truism, and the troops get happy with post. But yeah, definitely they did. Except for the Dear Johns, but I didn't get one, so that was fine. So Bluey letter, just enough to say what was going on and how you were doing, and of course delivery of the parcels, which was quite nice. But yeah, this is for the internet. I have to be honest, we were over there 3 months, and there's still songs from that period, social history, where it's like, oh, when was that again? Was it 94? Oh, I was away then. And I was still catching up with the various music vibes sort of months, years afterwards, saying, oh, I didn't know that was a hit. So, a bit of a 3 months in a hole, which is different from Boz. We were in Boz, although it was 6 months. There was still MTV, still news, still newspapers. It was just a bit of a lack of a news zone, which is not particularly a bad thing. Anyway, so we were there. Once we found out what our duties were, we sort of psyched ourselves up. It was 6 days on at the refugee camp and 1 day off. 1 day off was mainly for obviously admin, catch up with various washing and whatnot. And also, if you're really, really lucky, guard, which I had to do once or twice, but such is life. But yeah, so 6 days on, 3 hours there, 3 hours back, had about 6 hours transporting there, working there, so that was a bit of fun. I think the following news clip from the BBC gives a good view of what we were doing, so I'll give some pictures after that.
High in Rwanda's hills, a tragedy is unfolding away from the world's gaze. The death rate in the refugee camp here at Kibeho outstrips even that at Goma these days, the town in Zaire whose name became a byword for the crisis in this part of East Africa. Aldershot's troops were among the first people into this camp. They found 60,000 refugees huddled together, sick and hungry, but too frightened to go home.
We have deliberately gone to those camps that are less accessible or which have been scenes of particular violence. And that means, of course, that the other aid agencies like Oxfam and Merlin have been able to concentrate on more accessible and larger camps.
Come here. Don't be scared. Right, what is wrong with the child?
Every day the Army's medics open up their treatment centre. By the time they're done, 600 to 700 people will have passed through the former school that now serves as a clinic.
The "if only I could do more" feeling, it hits you several times a day. I think now most of us have come to terms with it. Initially, people found it quite difficult. This is very primitive medicine. You cannot bring Western medicine into this sort of situation. It doesn't work. We have to simplify things greatly. We don't have a laboratory facility, so we rely on our clinical skills, and we have to go by our best guess.
The medics do their best in all the circumstances, but a blackboard in one of the former classrooms, which now houses the sickest patients, tells the full story. Sometimes it's a case of make do and mend. The doctors had to rely on our camera light to carry out this operation. The medics here reckon a camp of this size really needs a hospital of 200 to 300 beds. Instead, they have just one ward where they can look after 12 patients. Trained to cope with serious injury on the battlefield, nothing could have prepared the men for what they've had to deal with here.
It's horrific. It is pretty horrific. It's the children that hurt most people, that would hurt or have most effect on the people, and it's pretty bad. It is a bit heartrending. That is who you feel the most sorry for, the children. They can't look after themselves, and it's pretty frightening what happens to the children.
Here in Kibeho, the Army's doctors and nurses have made a difference. But the only real cure for the problems faced by these people is an end to the fear that keeps them here.
So I brought my camera on tour, which was a bit of luck because I don't think anybody else did. And so one day I decided to do a photo sort of history of moving from Katabi, where we're based, to Kibeho, just to see what it was like, for history. So as you can see, these are the sort of the average roads once you've moved off the main road. Just a muddy track, and they got pretty shitty during the rainy season. And yeah, that was sort of 2.5 hours of the journey. Initially, we started off in the ambulances, which was a bit bumpy, but not too bad. 8 of us in the back, 2 up front. But after a couple of weeks, for some obscure reason, which none of the junior ranks were really sure of, we got told we couldn't go in the ambulances, so we had to go in a truck. So we probably something to do with the ambulances rolling. They'd take us all out. And back of a 4-tonner is not a pleasant experience, and it's definitely not a pleasant experience 6 hours a day with no suspension on the shitty arse roads. So that was a morale boost all round. But there you go. So you can see best place to be for vision was right at the tail. Worst place to be for rain, dust and shit was right at the tail. So you got the decision. If you could, you just take your pillow and try and have a sleep. But she's always a bit tricky with the truck rocking around like an idiot. So these pictures go through, shortly coming up. I think it's a Zimbabwean UN battalion had a sort of a way station or a patrol station halfway along, or a third of the way along, which is always a morale boost. That's the only time we saw them, was on the way past, and they seemed pleasant enough, but didn't actually have any contact with them. You see, it's not a 432, it's the American 113 or whatever it is. But yeah, certainly they had more firepower than we did. 60 rounds of SA-80. Just another view of the Zimbabwean guard post, if you want it, just as we're shooting past. So like I say, 3 hours on a bad day. What can I say? Couldn't read. Stereo wasn't that good, but such is life. We're at DS. We're in the back of a 4-tonner. The sections, not that we didn't see much of the sections while we were in Kibeho, but they had the use of rovers, so they just sort of sprinted, left late, finished early, sprinted past us, so good on them. A little bit more freedom than we had. As they went off to the various outer locations of the refugee camp, whereas we were just in the central school area, which was explained in the video. So this is just approaching the out reaches of the camp. You see a bit of the ubiquitous plastic UN stuff. And we're just moving through the outlying areas and just coming up to the main settlement. So there were the school areas, which you'll see shortly, and there's also the cathedral or church, probably cathedral to be honest, which was burnt out at the beginning of the genocide. So we cleaned out the area, had our treatment area. We worked during the day, obviously about 6 hours, wherever it was. And then the locals in the ward, where it was my responsibility, looked after their relatives overnight. So you'll see the filter system shortly, but the medics basically screened them, sent them down to the main area. Some of the DS medics screened them, and they were sent into the treatment areas for treatment by the medics who were told to be there, and me with my trade there. So that was my job basically for the next 2.5 months. And yeah, got the usual malaria, meningitis, magic wounds are still quite popular. And just the sort of run-of-the-mill GP stuff that you'd see with a little bit of Africa specialities thrown in. See G there, he's in the middle. We've met him before. He was the Australian fellow on Long Look. Good guy. He was there for 3 months. Different from the Australians who came over in their field unit and their hospital unit. He was just on a sort of extended exercise with the Brits. Come up is a picture of the sort of average day. That many people were queuing. Majority of them would be treated for dehydration and various bits and pieces before they got to the treatment area and the dressing station. But yeah, that consistent number of people coming through got a little bit wearing, as you can imagine. But treatment was carried out. Anybody who needed to stay overnight stayed overnight. And this stay was facilitated by the translators. So got a couple of pictures coming up. Lady in the middle and lady on the right in the bright turquoise dress. The translators, so English to the local language. And they facilitated a lot of stuff. The ones we had at Gabriel were quite useful. I didn't feel that there was any negativity at all, and they put across what we required. But again, high pain thresholds from the patients there, and the use of the medications, drugs, whatever it is, the antibiotics. Again, amazing results. Again, treatment-wise, equipment was mainly the UN stuff. There's some of our equipment. You can see the para roll bags up there, but a lot and a native stretcher. A lot of stuff was UN stuff, and a lot of it was for adults. It's hard to put adult stuff in, like IV cannulas, into a child the size you can see there. But what can you do? I mean, you got to do it, so you do it. Here's my domain, the ward, and here's an average day. Rehydration, people who have got various illnesses and diseases, IV medications, the whole gauntlet thing. So each and every day come into this. But people got better, so, it was successful in what we did. And, we could do what we did for the hours we were there. So as a rule, the people were very friendly. A couple of the local kids that we befriended for most days. I think this girl's name is Alice. I can't remember her brother's name. But yeah, they hung around. They seemed very pleasant. There's no school or not much else to do, so I suppose we were sort of amusement for them. And the poor bastards even had to listen to some British indie music. So apologies for any scarring, but I think they got the Smiths and the farm. But what can you do? Just coming up is a picture of one of the Siggy guys who was attached to the section. Good guy. And I'll go through the makeup of our section shortly, but we had a couple of Siggies there. And just coming up is the Gabriel Church, which was just around the corner from where we were operating. As you can see, it's burnt down, as discussed previously at the beginning of the genocide. And just got some views on both the inside and out. This was repaired afterwards, not sure when, but yeah, just taking this next picture off the web, and it seems to be in a much better state now. So we were quite focused on doing the medical work, but in the meantime, the work of moving refugees and making them safe was going on in the background, which is shown quite well in the following news clips.
People who fled here to the southwest corner of Rwanda at the height of this country's civil war. But time is running out for these people if a fresh disaster is to be avoided in the coming months. These troops from Aldershot with the United Nations know they must seize the moment if they're to empty camps like this one. And today that moment seems to have come.
The risk is that if they don't get back to their farms and get the seeds into the ground now, we will have another disaster next year with famine. And they've got to get back before the rains and get the seeds in. A situation has arisen here where confidence is at such a state, they feel that it's safe to go home. And the aim is to, once we actually get them onto the vehicles and get them moving, the process will speed up then. And the aim, of course, eventually is to clear this place before the rainy season comes, before the disease starts in again.
Yes, follow me.
Down on the valley floor, the soldiers from the Army's Airborne Brigade are busy marshalling people ready for the convoy of trucks that will take them home. It may look chaotic, but at least the people are now moving.
15 Alpha, 16 Alpha, where's my last wrong, another 25 wanting to go to Ngenda, over.
And after a shaky start to the day, that's a relief for these soldiers.
There's a bit of confusion when we turned up this morning. Apparently some of the local officials had caused a bit of panic. The rumours started to be spread that there was a massacre when some refugees had returned to another location, but it's been sorted out now.
Indeed, this time the message from the army does seem to have got through to the people who wait to begin their journey home.
There are lots of roadblocks between here and the village where I come from. If my family tried to make the journey on our own, then we would be harassed by the soldiers on the checkpoints. Hopefully, if we go with the UN convoy, our journey will be trouble-free.
Their meagre possessions stowed on the army's trucks, the refugees face a gruelling time. The lorries shipped out from Aldershot are short on frills for such an arduous journey.
You're talking about 70 k's cross country, which is quite sticky this weather, and it's very dusty as well, so a bit tiring for them.
A message from ahead says a fallen tree is blocking the road. At last the all clear comes and the convoy rolls out from Camp 101 here in southwest Rwanda. The convoy's route will take it past a number of other refugee camps. The hope is that the sight of these people going home will encourage the inmates of those camps too to return to their farms. Operation Homeward's success in the coming week will depend on whether or not Aldershot soldiers can persuade people right across the region that they're safe in the United Nations' hands. Joe Campbell, BBC South Today, Musengi in Rwanda.
So I did do a couple of trips down to the capital, Kigali. There was a couple of medical escorts that I did, and I took some photos on the way. You can see a couple of scenes. Convoys always travelled with at least 2 vehicles for comms and for safety. And when we got to Kigali, the stadium that was there was shared half between the Canadians, half between the Brits. Yeah, the Canadians had a lot more creature comforts than us, including regular phone calls, and yeah, sort of better all-round stuff, but you know, they weren't airborne, so what do you expect? So yeah, October we went on an R&R, which is pretty nice. Went to a place called Boyumba, I think is how you pronounce it. We had 2 or 3 nights sort of away from the refugee centre. We came via Kigali when we did a couple of days doing a med cover there for the troops, up to Boyumba. And then we went across the border of Uganda for some trips, which again was quite pleasant. But the highlight was a safari organised by the army, sort of at army stands back of a lorry. But really, considering 23 at the time, going on a safari with a bunch of lads in Africa, it was pretty damn good. This is the border between Rwanda and Uganda. Took a few of the normal shots as you do, but yeah. So we went for the safari. It's supposed to be 2 nights, but I think the truck shit itself, so we had 3 nights, which is quite good. And it's just nice to be away, really. No weapons, no bullshit. Just as long as you turn up for food, and then weren't a dick when it came to the safari. Everything was good. Saw the stock animals. And you really realised later on that some of the things that we did weren't particularly safe. There's a couple of pictures being next to some rather large animals, which seemed like a good idea at the time, but probably wasn't. They're coming up shortly. So just a picture of the hills. I think Rwanda is known as the land of 1,000 hills or something, and yeah, it's definitely a lot. Most of it is like that, but in the south, just by Kitabo, there's a forested area, which you didn't really go into. Sort of drove around a couple of times, but yeah, most of Rwanda seemed to be that sort of country. Luckily, by this time, the moustache growing competition had finished, which I'd lost rather sadly, but it was a sense of relief. A couple of other pictures taking the ambo out for a bit of a trip, because they get a bit bored just going to and from Gabriel each day. This is us, 3 of us going over the border, Uganda-Rwanda border, just a bit of a day out. A couple of pictures of me and some of the section guys on the border of Uganda-Rwanda. Me in the middle, the only non-paratrained, halfway there, but not quite. Airborne Siggy on the left, airborne or paratrained medic on the right. And yeah, notice the fellow in the middle is wearing a parasmock. Bit of a status symbol, what can I say? So this is the place we went to. I mean, it's the Queen Elizabeth Safari Park. I just had a look at it on the map. It's sort of not that far from the Rwanda border. But like I say, the accommodation was not too bad. The meals was fantastic. It had this proper cooked chips steak meal that was just fantastic after being on army rations for so long. So possibly the highlight of the tour there. Me and my mate G did rig a photo on the equator with the world supply of army shit equipment around us, because why keep it tidy. And here's some photos of the inadvisable close encounters. That was the bull elephant that got quite upset that we were hanging around like dicks. You can't really blame it either. So that came out for a bit of a charge. So I got onto the lorries and buggered off quite quickly. And here's me standing probably stupidly close to a hippo, which again is in a vice, since I think they're apart from mosquitoes, like the things that cause the most deaths. So, but yeah, good picture opportunity. What can I say? But yeah, the safari was a good rest and certainly recharged the batteries. There's a couple other days when we had days off. There's Arnhem Day. We had a spontaneous, well not spontaneous, a planned day for that. We were out in Kartabo, so just a bit of a quiet day. Apparently it was much more lively in Kigali. And yeah, there's rumours of a naked race around the track, which didn't impress the Canadians very much, but sounded fun. But yeah, so came back off the safari and just carried on for another couple of months, and then it was time for pack up. So here's a picture of the fellas in the room, the other medics there, just on the last couple of days. Note, we've got the wonderful jungle boots and the fabled tropical DPM trousers, which were always pretty good. Next photo is when we moved down to Kigali. We'd packed up, and there you can see the section. Of the guys who were there, there was 1, 2, 3 signallers attached from 216, 1 Australian medic sergeant, and 1, 2, 3, 4 medics and me. There's one extra one, a fellow who's just joining for the photo on the far right. He's a section sergeant. But yeah, so for a section in the DS, 3 were from nothing to do with medics at all. They were there to enhance our support, and they drove and acted kind of as sort of auxiliaries. So important to note that they had no medical training, so they did really well. They're good guys. But yeah, so that was the makeup of A section. It was pretty much reflected in the other members of the DS as well. So like I say, there was at Kigali. I think we had 1 or 2 days left in country. Some of those fellas drove the ambos back via Kenya to be transported by sea. I didn't get pinged for that. Yeah, probably because I couldn't drive an army vehicle because I didn't have a proper license. So I got to fly back. And unfortunately, we couldn't disembark. Apparently, there have been some issues with some of the other units that had gone back, getting a bit too sort of punchy, so we just flew straight back. This is Kigali Stadium. After the Brits have packed up, all you can see left there is Canadian gear. And yeah, from my point of view, from the 1 or 2 nights I stayed there, it was just a couple of army canvas tents and some water stuff. But yeah, so that was the rent. That was the rear, and they even had a small naffy or effie where you could buy chocolate. Yeah, I wish. So coming up are some of the stats that were collated for the time we were there. So as you can see, number of treatments: diarrhea, 33,000, diarrhea of blood, 13,000, meningitis, measles, respiratory, malaria, others, and surgery. So that's quite big numbers. Obviously, a lot of that is dehydration, as we're seeing and flicked off. But yeah, again, on the ward where I was, yeah, we would get the ones who weren't easily repaired as such, or weren't easily treated. So that's quite a lot of effort there. Coming up is a photo of the unit. So again, it's just before the day before we left, and that's 23 para group as a whole. So I forget how many numbers there exactly, but yeah, it's not that big really. And yeah, I think that was the only photo we were all in together, to be honest. It's funny, if you talk to any Brits who've been on a UN tour, one of the things that always comes up is UN pay. We basically don't get any. I think for the whole 3 or 4 months I was away, I got £80 for Rwanda. Whereas I think the Canadians were on that tax-free a day plus enhanced benefits after they retired. So if you ever want to wind up a British squaddy, talk about the UN pay or lack of. It was the same in Bosnia. So after we got back from the UK, I went off to do a jumps course, just carried on doing what we were doing. Meanwhile, in Rwanda, Gabriel continued, despite the efforts of the government to reduce the size of the camp. I'm not going to go into details, but because I don't know it 100%. But this kind of came to a head in sort of early the next year, 1995. The Aussies were still there. I think they were the second rotation, and yeah, I mean the RPF surrounded the camp and then sort of attacked it. I mean, there's supposed to be over 4,000 killed, which is covered in that book. Which is on the thing, and also there's a website which is quite useful. So like I say, next picture is me after I got posted from the airborne unit into a hospital in Germany. I wish I was that skinny now. But yeah, so a tour is a tour. I think it was quite a success for the unit and myself. But yeah, it certainly had an effect. So for anybody who's managed to stay to the end, it's gone on a bit longer than I thought it would. Well done. And yeah, don't worry, this is the last one for this section. So thanks for staying. Catch you later.